In times like these, we need an anchor. Be very sure your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. That rock is Jesus. Yes, he is the one. That rock is Jesus, the only one. Be very sure your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. Psalm 121 said, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hill, from whence come my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in, from this time forth, even now, forevermore. Let us repeat the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restored my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my hair with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Honorable members, as we proceed in our budget debate on our bill for the appropriation of diverse sums of money on towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on the revenue account side, when we suspended, the honorable member for West End, Grand Bahama, and Bimini had reserved the floor. The chair now recognizes the honorable member for West End, Grand Bahama, and Bimini.
All right. Mr. Speaker, I rise honored to stand once again in this esteemed house on behalf of the constituents of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. Honored because in spite of all that we have been through, from hurricanes to this latest pandemic, COVID-19, God is good to us. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I did not, through you, express to the fearless frontline workers of our beloved Commonwealth, especially those of West Grand Bahama and Bimini, my greatest appreciation as they battle this COVID-19 pandemic. I salute all of you. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to extend my condolences to the 11 families of the COVID-19 victims. On behalf of my family and I, may the souls of the dearly departed rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, in the past 3 years, this administration has endured what many refer to as the most consecutive crises that any administration has had to face since statistics have been recorded. From Hurricane Dorian in 2019, taking our second and third largest economies hostage in the north, and simultaneously wiping our fiscal and debt reduction targets with it, which were strongly within our reach, to the world's most devastating global health pandemic since 1919, which is set to shrink our economy this year by 12%. The Bahamas and this administration since 2017 has taken a wild ride. Despite these facts, Mr. Speaker, members of the side opposite on a daily basis continue to spew rhetoric, opposing the government on every issue, flip-flopping on boring recommendations almost overnight, and offer a bunch of empty words rather than coming forward with actual solutions to the unpredictable problems that we are experiencing today. Solutions which only 3 years ago they failed to implement, and all of a sudden they have now become experts on good governance. Mr. Speaker, my message to this honorable House, my constituents, and by extension, our country is simple. We will not break, nor will we go broke. Mr. Speaker, in my capacity as Parliamentary Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, I am responsible for our media corporations. Since taking office in 2017, we have made major strides advancing these agencies, and this budget year will be no different. As the Parliamentary Secretary responsible for the Bahamas Information Services, I am proud to report that it is transitioning smoothly into a multimedia entity that embraces technology, utilizing it as the foundation to effectively disseminate news and information for the government of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, we can report that BIS and its staff of only 52 individuals between its Freeport and Nassau office is working effectively and efficiently. Its progress is evident compared to 3 years ago, with regular updates of government news, wider coverage of government events, and better use of technology, inclusive of increased live streaming. Mr. Speaker, our Freeport office recently bid adieu to long and outstanding journalist, Mr. Simon Lewis, who is now retired. Mr. Lewis's leadership over the years has assisted tremendously in the growth of the Bahamas Information Service, and we are indebted to him. On that note, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas Information Services wishes to welcome Mr. Ricardo Liborn, who will serve as the head of our Freeport office. We look forward to Mr. Liborn's leadership in elevating that office to yet another level in which the Bahamian people can be proud of. Mr. Speaker, I am also happy to report that BIS Nassau, which has operated out of the Broadcasting Corporation building for years, is set to move into its very own headquarters, equipped with $500,000 in state-of-the-art equipment. This upgrade in both its location, equipment, and operation will no doubt result in a higher productivity rate from its staff, and we are grateful for the leadership of Director General Kevin Harris. Mr. Speaker, the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas. Just recently, Mr. Speaker, we would have also bid adieu to several long-serving employees: Charles Russell, Valentia Bartlett, Andrea Genoa, Betty Thompson-Moss, Vaughn Aubrey, Terry Nottage, and Laura Bartlett. Many of them, Mr. Speaker, would have contributed significantly to the growth also of the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, and we will miss them and thank them for all that they would have instilled while there. Mr. Speaker, in this budget, the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, in its 83rd year in operation, like all government-run agencies, was asked to reduce its spending by 20%. However, Mr. Speaker, we find it necessary to complete the radio building roof at headquarters off of Collins Avenue. This project comes in at a total of $214,000. Further, Mr. Speaker, we have long-standing legacy debts, Mr. Speaker, that we need to pay off, and we admonish, Mr. Speaker, that consideration be given to assist us in achieving just that. Mr. Speaker, the Northern Service lost its transmitter during the passage of Hurricane Dorian. This loss resulted in 8:10 a.m. being non-operational. However, the transmitter is now on Grand Bahama and anticipated to be fully installed by month's end. Mr. Speaker, since the last budget, BTC has had some major strides. During the passage of Hurricane Dorian, BTC's infrastructure on the island of Abaco in Grand Bahama was severely damaged. Since then, BTC technicians have begun the process of building a new fiber backbone in Abaco to ensure greater network resiliency. Additionally, they've also begun building a redundant subsea fiber between the keys in Abaco, Green Turtle Key, Manawa Key, Guana Key, and Elbow Key. Mr. Speaker, Furthermore, BTC has also started Grand Key's restoration of microwave link and mobile services, which previously provided free Wi-Fi to all residents of Grand Key. And prior to the COVID-19 lockdown, internet capacity was upgraded to 10G. As the island of Grand Bahama continues to rebuild, Mr. Speaker, I am happy to report that in its hardest hit area, East Grand Bahama, a new containerized central office with solar powering to maintain mobile service has been deployed. Mr. Speaker, BTC has also upgraded broadband speeds by 50% for all customers on the fiber to the home network in Grand Bahama, Eastern New Providence, and also provided free flow study for all students during our COVID-19 lockdown period. I turn now to land to survey, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ensuring that Bahamians are owners of land in their very own country is important. As the inheritors of this nation, it is only right that where crown land exists in particular, it is handed over to Bahamians. Mr. Speaker, lands and surveys will undergo a significant restructuring exercise as we aim to better equip the entity with a digitized platform that will not only ensure a smoother operation, but enable those seeking a piece of what they are entitled to as Bahamians to find comfort in their applications and that they are treated with fairness and transparency. Lands and Survey, Mr. Speaker, can now boast of having the latest in surveying equipment, having utilized some $500,000 towards that purchase. The acquisition of new equipment, Mr. Speaker, utilizes what is known as cadastral surveys. Cadastral surveys are those in which drones are used to provide aerial photography. This, Mr. Speaker, is important due to the rapid development of New Providence and can also be used for the developmental planning of the Family Island, roads, subdivisions, healthcare facilities as well. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, Lands and Survey will also be able to carry out hydrographic surveys, which will aid in the monitoring of the channels of major seaports in particular. This, Mr. Speaker, is a major leap towards even greater land ownership by Bahamians, something the F&M administration and this administration in particular works tirelessly for. But more on that progress will come from the Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis. Mr. Speaker, I now shift to my constituency. My dear constituents of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. A constituency since the beginning of the new millennium has faced challenge after challenge and catastrophe after catastrophe. Just imagine, Mr. Speaker, storm after storm over a 15-year frame. Imagine being devastated every time by flooding, houses and businesses severely damaged, homes wiped away. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, being rescued amidst the most dangerous weather, having next to no designated shelters, having to rebuild with very little to no finances, and needing more help than what has been issued, or not receiving any help at all. Those are the stories of many of my constituents in West Grand Bahama, Mr. Speaker, who feels that they have now seen and experienced it all. West End, the capital of Grand Bahama, for those who are still in denial, in particular, can attest to the devastation of hurricanes, especially, along with other areas such as Boodle Bay, Deadman's Reef North, Holmes Rock North, and 8 Mile Rock. Add this also, Mr. Speaker. Two shores less than a mile apart, a mere 7 miles long, with hardly no seawall to protect homes and businesses, only 2 designated shelters, and no high ground. This is Bimini. Mr. Speaker, imagine being the capital of an island, a gateway to a country, but it appears that you are only that on paper. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, how constituents of West Grand Bahama and Bimini must feel? These communities, Mr. Speaker, have been neglected for years. I dare say abandoned and left to fend for ourselves. Where is the progress, Mr. Speaker? It cannot be at the 8 Mile Rock High School, where the student population has dwindled drastically. It cannot be at the Louise McDonald High School, where there is a need for an upgrade to its curriculum and facility. It cannot be in the lack of scholarships being offered to deserving students of my constituency. It cannot be in infrastructure where potholes are rampant, seawalls are missing, or roads need paving. It cannot be in the financial sector where banking and development is nearly non-existent and more business grants are needed. It cannot be in its youth when there are no major sporting facilities or community centers. Where is the progress, Mr. Speaker, for a community that has held its end of the bargain? A community that has produced ambassadors like the Buddy Heels, the Jonquil Joneses, the Divine Parkers, the Roger Smiths, the Sherman Tank Williams, the Ryan and Virgil Stewarts, the Charlie Softly Rubens, and the Yama Bahamas. Isn't it ironic, Mr. Speaker, that in spite of minutest amounts of finances, facilities, or infrastructure being invested over the many years, the same very community continues to produce the best of the best in people across all divides? We will not break. Here is the current reality of West Grand Bahama and Bimini, Mr. Speaker. More jobs are desperately needed. We strongly appeal for the 3 major projects: the administrative complex in Pinedale, 8 Mile Rock, the junior high school in Holmes Rock, the administrative complex in Bimini to be completed. We petition for seawalls to be constructed to protect constituents in times of storms. We admonish for roads to be paved to improve commuting. We ask that our small business sector be afforded grants that were requested to develop the local economies. Mr. Speaker, I am not in this parliament for pretty. I am here, Mr. Speaker, to use my voice and petition this government to invest more in West Grand Bahama and Bimini and my constituents. I firmly believe that the cabinet of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas needs to be kinder to us. This is not about bashing today. No, it is not about bashing cabinet today, because we realize the cabinet has a country to run, and West Grand Bahama and Bimini is only but one constituency. Mr. Speaker, as the cabinet warms up to address the many issues noted in West Grand Bahama and Bimini, the Member of Parliament has been given the ball. And what is done with the ball, many believe will result in a win or a loss of the game. But you see, Mr. Speaker, politics is not a game and should never be perceived as one. It should be about making a positive impact, a positive difference in the lives of people that you represent. This is what I aim for, Mr. Speaker. This is what I am about. As the Member of Parliament for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, Mr. Speaker, I pride myself in 2 things: a belief that God will never forsake us, and a belief that my constituents will rise to the occasion no matter what the obstacle may be. We have proven it time and time again. However, this is not to say that we do not need help or deserve it. Mr. Speaker, in the 5 years I have as the Member of Parliament for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, there is $500,000 allocated to our office to spend in my constituency. Of that $500,000, $100,000 is given annually. Of that $100,000, $25,000 is given 4 times a year. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, our office has $25 to spend 4 times a year. $25,000 in 14 polling divisions across 2 separate islands with a population of more than 8,000 people. Mr. Speaker, I appeal to all of the mathematicians out there to do the math on this one for me, because we stopped a long time ago in trying to figure out what $500,000 could do in 5 years, serving more than 8,000 people. Instead, Mr. Speaker, we focus on empowering people. $300,000 today. That is what we have had access to. Mr. Speaker, I firmly believe that any citizenry that expects the government to meet its wants is a citizenry that lacks patriotism. Governments are put in place to meet the needs of people, and this government has demonstrated time after time that in spite of what the challenges may be, the needs of the people remain a priority. You see, Mr. Speaker, yes, big projects matter, but small things make the difference. To this day, what West Grand Bahama and Bimini lacks in infrastructure, we have taken initiative to lead in areas where persons are falling through the cracks through its MP and her team. Prime examples, Mr. Speaker. When the Holmes Rock Primary School calls and says that they have no copier machine in order to produce exams or copy coursework, the Member of Parliament steps in and buys a state-of-the-art copier, no questions asked. That is just one story, Mr. Speaker. When the Louise McDonald Track and Field High School, which hasn't been represented in island sports in Grand Bahama for years, and the talent of the athletes not demonstrated, asks for assistance to go to track and field in Grand Bahama, Mr. Speaker, this is where the Member of Parliament steps in. This is where a school that had no medals in 2016 or 2017, in its year of 2018 started with 2. In 2019, it went to 4 and more, Mr. Speaker. This is where the progress now begins. Mr. Speaker, prime example, donations to the 8 Mile Rock High School basketball team. When the young men have no money or no funds to travel to New Providence, and there is a need to help, Mr. Speaker, when they call on their Member of Parliament, this is where we step in. When there is a need, Mr. Speaker, for repairs to the home of a disabled resident in West End, Grand Bahama, and many more, when the system isn't working, Mr. Speaker, and persons are falling through the cracks, this is where the Member of Parliament steps in, Mr. Speaker. This is not new, Mr. Speaker. It happens in every government. This is not the only government, Mr. Speaker, where people are falling through the cracks. Government is a system. Sometimes many say it does not have a heart. And that is what we need, Mr. Speaker, in serving people, a heart. Every government, not here in the Bahamas alone, but worldwide. When times are tough, Mr. Speaker, for students who are abroad but would have never received a scholarship and they're incapable of graduating, and a parent calls and says that her child cannot graduate unless they pay a fee, Mr. Speaker, this is where the Member of Parliament steps in. Times are tough, Mr. Speaker, for many, and the government may not always get to everyone. This is where the Member of Parliament comes in, Mr. Speaker. When parents speak about not having uniforms or school supplies for their children, Mr. Speaker, we don't just go after one child, Mr. Speaker. This Member of Parliament has gone after an entire community through numerous initiatives in which back-to-school activities are being held. Mr. Speaker, supplies run into the thousands. but the investment, Mr. Speaker, is worth it all. Financial assistance towards cultural events in a community, Mr. Speaker, which an entire community depends on for an economic boost. This is known, Mr. Speaker, in the Bimini Regatta, in the poker runs. This is where the money goes, Mr. Speaker, in our community. Mr. Speaker, these are just a few of the cases presented on a daily basis to the Member of Parliament and team, which we respond to wholeheartedly. Mr. Speaker, where roads are inundated with potholes in West Grand Bahama and help has yet to arrive, citizens themselves take to the streets and fill them in temporarily. When the Bimini community was without an ambulance and fire partners from the Bimini Fire Rescue, as well as the Caribbean Fire Rescue Benevolent, step in just in time to save structures and lives with needed donations. And Mr. Speaker, we have partners in the form of Tim and Tom Neidert and Joe Diaby and their wives that continue to do for Bimini. And for this, we are grateful for those partnerships. Mr. Speaker, when the Bimini Clinic is without EMS personnel or police force, without firefighters on the island, a Wellington Sayers and Ambrose Francis step up to the plate and assist regularly without pay. This is what it means to give back to country, Mr. Speaker. Those stories are just a few of my community, working with its MP and empowering themselves in the meantime. We are a team, Mr. Speaker. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, West Grand Bahama and Bimini deserves more than we have gotten. We realize that there is a major disparity in what is received from area to area across this nation, and appeal to the relevant ministries to work on improving that. West Grand Bahama and Bimini is happy to see the success of fellow constituencies. And all we are asking for, Mr. Speaker, is that ours is not discounted. Mr. Speaker, this Member of Parliament has come to the realization that making a difference includes more than giving material things or feeding into a mentality that governments and members of parliaments are gods, that people can be bought for a vote, or that the success of a community depends on one person. When the reality is, it depends on each and every one of us. A good child becomes a good citizen. A good citizen contributes to a thriving community, and a thriving community ensures a resilient country. In West Grand Bahama and Bimini, we never lost sight of it being the people's time, Mr. Speaker, because as you have just been made aware, all we have done, all we could have done was invest in the lives of people. And the people of West Grand Bahama continue to give back to this country. The widow's might is what we continue to practice on a daily basis. And it is what we will hold fast to until such time as we are blessed with more. Mr. Speaker, nevertheless, we in West Grand Bahama and Bimini will not appear to be ungrateful and must highlight and thank the Cabinet of the Bahamas for several undertakings. Following Hurricane Dorian, the Ministry of Works signed more than $800,000 in contracts to clean up West Grand Bahama. This empowered 3 small business operators in that sector and employed more than 20 young men. For this, we say thank you. The long-awaited completion of the bridge of the Fishing Hole Road, the only thoroughfare that connects the West Grand Bahama community to Freeport, is now nearing its official opening. For this, we say thank you. A contract for the repavement of the runway of the Bimini Airport, amounting to some $6,211,285.79, has been signed and awarded to Knowles Construction and Development Company. Work is anticipated to start very soon. For this, we say thank you. A contract in the amount of some $6 million has been awarded for road works in Grand Bahama. We in West Grand Bahama expect to benefit from this contract with an equal amount invested in our area. Again, in advance, we say thank you and that we will also need much more. Mr. Speaker, we also await for works to begin in the upgrade of Bimini Sands, which was purchased some months back and is expected to also provide an economic boost to that island. The new name, according to developers, Bimini Cove. The community of Bimini is seeking the government's support in ensuring this becomes a reality. For this, we say thank you, Mr. Speaker. You see, Mr. Speaker, the people of West Grand Bahama sent me in this place to represent them. We have no issue giving kudos to the government, my government, our government, and saying thank you when it is due. However, we will fight for what we know we deserve and what we need to become stronger, self-sustainable, and more resilient. We will fight for it, Mr. Speaker, behind closed doors and in the public if we have to. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention to the current economic condition. I will begin to speak to our present state, and I am led to reiterate, we will not go broke. I mentioned earlier that the Cabinet of the Bahamas, those responsible for ensuring that this government is run in a way to effectively impact our citizenry, it has its hands full. And while as the Member of Parliament for West Grand Bahama, I stand here appealing for much more to be done in our constituency, we are not selfish to think that it is all about us. We have a country to run, and let the record reflect that this administration is doing just that, running an entire country under less than ideal circumstances. As a matter of fact, under the most devastating and catastrophic 3 years that any administration has had to endure in the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, we came into office with a deficit of $660 million, or 5.5% of GDP left by the former administration for an F&M administration to settle. That meant we had to take drastic measures to save our lives, our children, and our grandchildren. With this in mind, our Minister of Finance and his entire team had it right in 2018 when value-added tax was increased to 12%. Allow me to illustrate it to you, Mr. Speaker. Imagine a Bahamas that did not have a 12% value-added tax to cover the hundreds of millions of dollars in unpaid bills left by the Christie Davis administration. Imagine that. Imagine a Bahamas in September 2019, after the passage of Hurricane Dorian, that neglected to resolve our fiscal position and did not have 12% value-added tax to pay down on the deficit as this F&M administration did. Where would our much-needed borrowing capacity come from? Imagine, Mr. Speaker, a Bahamas without the foresight of this F&M administration and our Minister of Finance, K. Peter Turnquest, to reduce our deficit in our first 2 years in office by some $440.7 million, a 67% reduction in the deficit since we assumed office. Which position would we as the government be in to assist our citizens during this global pandemic of COVID-19? And Mr. Speaker, that very same team at the Ministry of Finance has it right again in 2020. That very team has it right again, Mr. Speaker, as they shift their focus from deficit reduction to building a resilient Bahamas. The citizens of the Bahamas stabilize our economy and transform this crisis into an opportunity for our national restoration. The budgets presented to date by this administration have taken into account what we are faced with as a country, what is needed to stabilize and sustain us at an international level, and certainly what is required to ensure the lives of our people are impacted positively. The 2021 budget is evident, Mr. Speaker, that meeting the needs of the people in a time such as this remains this administration's primary focus. Let me reiterate just one or just some of the allocations and increases as presented by the Minister of Finance, K. Peter Turnquist. An increase in $18 million to expand free primary care through NHI. An allocation of $48 million to put money in the hands of unemployed Bahamians through special assistance programs. An increase of $50 million from $5 million to $55 million for the extremely successful Small Business Development Center. An allocation of $80 million to advance solarization in our family islands. An allocation of $120 million to maintain payroll and keep Bahamians employed through tax credits and deferrals during these upcoming months of economic hardship due to COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, an allocation of $515.5 million to stimulate employment with a massive expansion of public construction projects throughout our archipelago, which includes West Grand Bahama and Bimini. You see, Mr. Speaker, this is known as foresight. When you are planning for the future, Mr. Speaker, planning means doing what is necessary in the present to secure yourself for the future. We were secured when we came in 2017, Mr. Speaker, and this country will be secured when we come back in 2022. Mr. Speaker, I now shift my focus to our fight against the coronavirus on the island of Bimini. As our healthcare professionals continue to do an amazing job in containing this virus on our shores in Bimini, we know firsthand of its deadly impact. Mr. Speaker, Bimini was the first to record a COVID-related death, having lost a prominent businesswoman, Kim Rule, the sister of our very own colleague here in the lower house, the Member of Parliament for Yamakura, Minister Ellsworth Johnson. Her death, Mr. Speaker, was not easy for our community, and today we still mourn with her family, having laid her to rest just this past Monday. Our island of Bimini, as you are aware, Mr. Speaker, was the first and only to carry out a complete 14-day lockdown after witnessing COVID-related cases increasing rapidly. During this lockdown, the government, along with the National Food Committee, ensured that the 2,000 plus residents of Bimini had sufficient food to last them throughout the lockdown via a food bank that was set up for this purpose. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, as I visited Bimini on Monday of this week to check on my constituents, they were still receiving food up to that date. We are grateful, Mr. Speaker, that since the lockdown, which began on May 18th and ended just recently, there are no new cases reported. That being said, Mr. Speaker, Biminites are just about ready to begin the new normal, which we all will have to experience. We anxiously await the reopening of the World Resorts Bimini and remain poised for the maiden arrival of Virgin Cruise Lines to our shores. This cruise is expected to dock in Bimini 3 times per month, each time carrying 2,700 passengers and 1,000 crew members. To put it into perspective, Mr. Speaker, Bimini only has a population of slightly over 2,000 people in total. Therefore, we are looking forward to this being a major economic stimulus to the entire island. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that the island of Bimini will be used when the story is told of our country's battle with COVID-19. And as the Member of Parliament for the island, I am hopeful that the story being told lends to the communities and nations being made aware of the trials as well as the triumphs so that they may effectively manage any situation that may be similar in their territories. I am also hopeful that history will reflect a community whose initial fear of being left to fend for themselves, with the help of this government, this free national movement government, and each other, instead rose to the occasion and pulled through as one people united in love and service. We have a long way to go, Mr. Speaker. And while this pandemic seems to be slowing down, we cannot let our guards down. And I continue to encourage Biminites, persons out of West Grand Bahama and Bimini and this entire country to always remain on the side of caution. Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up my contribution, I must say, weighing all the challenges mounted toward this administration since we took office on the 10th of May 2017, witnessing the tough decisions that had to be made on a dime for the betterment of the Bahamian people, and now reviewing this budget, which is stacked with policies which are set to develop a resilient Bahamas, it illustrates, Mr. Speaker, nothing less than a government that is for the people. Yes, Mr. Speaker, a government that is for the people. Don't worry, I can knock and then still love you. Mr. Speaker, to that end, West Grand Bahama and Bimini supports this budget. No, Mr. Speaker, to that end, West Grand Bahama and Bimini supports this budget and prays for every success in making a difference in the lives of those most vulnerable at this time. Mr. Speaker, we will not break, nor will we go broke. West Grand Bahama and Bimini supports this budget.
Thank you very much, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to commence my brief 2020-21 budget presentation by thanking the fine people of Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros constituency for their continued support and prayers. To further remind them, I will continue to work on their behalf in this honorable place. I will continue to fervently fight for the much-needed improvements in the various districts of my constituency. Mr. Speaker, further afield, globalization has been the driver for increased prosperity worldwide. It has also been in reverse in the last years due to the growth of populism in the U.S. and the European bloc in particular. The COVID-19 pandemic, on which much is being blamed today, may well provide further momentum for increasing national interest-oriented policies in the Western Hemisphere. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, common response to COVID-19 is needed, where developed or rich countries supporting developing countries is in the process of alleviating impacts on the poor. COVID-19 offers an opportunity to revive collaboration worldwide, but with public and political leaders in North America and Europe needing to broaden their perspective in mitigating the wider impact of the pandemic. The last decades have seen the emergence of a highly interlinked world. There has been a massive increase in global travel generally in tourism and in the tourism product. That has brought about many benefits to the world's population, with income rising and poverty dropping generally. And we in the Bahamas, for the most part, have been recipients in some form or the other of these global offerings. Mr. Speaker, in the coming year, a lot of political energy in the EU, North America, and other developed countries will be wasted, in my view, on debates on how to balance support for dealing with the impact of COVID-19 and on the pointless transnational funding of outdated institutional and economic models. Despite these political projected turbulence, efforts to alleviate the economic impact of this great crisis in OECD countries, they will eventually take off. They will find a way to increase, Mr. Speaker, credit to businesses and to the self-employed, delaying tax exemptions and by ensuring basic income support and job stability is present in their work markets. Mr. Speaker, it is quickly becoming clear that economic and the social impacts of COVID-19 in developing countries will stretch far beyond the immediate medical and social costs. Currently, the WHO is reporting that some 300,000 deaths from COVID-19 worldwide has taken place thus far, and some 3.6 plus persons have been surveyed with the COVID-19, with the coronavirus. In the developing countries, COVID-19 continues to spread, but medical and testing equipment are not in short supply. The once defended developed world has protected themselves first and foremost, and the small island states like ours have been by and large left to fend for themselves. However, the secondary impacts may go far beyond these primary effects. Hundreds of millions may go far beyond the primary effects. Hundreds of millions of people, many who work in the small-scale service industry, will suddenly find themselves without jobs. Traditionally, many of these people relied on the informal network in times of stress and hardship. However, safety nets like work through their family and friends over the years are unlikely to be sufficient today. Many relatives who could otherwise provide some support would have now lost their job. Family relations may be under further strain from the lockdowns. The doubling in domestic violence regionally has been reported as a consequence of people's confinement to their houses and neighborhoods in the combination with job losses, which has put further strain on social networks. Many of the poor will lose an important part of their savings to cope with this crisis, affecting all phases of life, including schooling, marriages, and pensions. Mr. Speaker, governments in the developing world will be forced to start remediation efforts in their fiscal affairs in particular, in order for them to minimize damage to their economies and societies at large. But these efforts must be transparent, collaborative, and broad-based in their outreach, with civil society, corporate community, NGOs, and other critical industry partners being involved in no small way. Mr. Speaker, as far as the U.S. economy, just next door, most figures from the Bloomberg Economics just recently published booklet looked at their standard dashboard of high-frequency alternative market database, and it shows slight and steady improvement for their weakest projections and in markets and further growth projections. These market indicators include filing for job unemployment benefits, consumer confidence, restaurant bookings and travel by air, and public transit, the list goes on. While the damage caused by COVID-19 pandemic was both extensive and abrupt, and with the gauges across the dashboard remaining incredibly downcast, the results of months of widespread business closures and joblessness, we today must live in hope. So even with some hiring in the U.S. and with new COVID cases elevated to over 100,000 weekly, customers in some regions are being slow to rush to open markets and retail stores. Additionally, the rioting after George Floyd, which has seen damage done to many small and medium-sized businesses, only adds to reason why it may be difficult for demand to snap back to the pre-pandemic levels. The constant refrain, pardon, Mr. Speaker, we have always heard in the Bahamas generally, by and large, South Beach, or when the U.S. markets open up, we'll be able to do our own thing. I then quickly bring us to an analogous scenario today in this honorable place. Mr. Speaker, I think I'll go to a different level today. For example, I want you to go in your minds and to hear what I hear as I move around. Imagine the Bahamas today, talking and thinking like a 58-year-old country. In my view, we have seen self-internal government since 1962, and we've done some really big things. Rich 48-year-old man, rich 48-year-old man, will still be talking and thinking like a child, waiting at home, 68 from 19 self-internal government, yeah. But still be at home waiting for mommy and daddy to prepare them a cook meal and giving them allowances and setting out their chores. You would look at that adult as having some kind of problem. Quite frankly, he should have his own family. We recognize the importance of making our own decisions. We should now be envisioning a world that is able to see us being and showcasing the best in ourselves. When we got self-internal government in 1962 and recognized, in 1964, pardon me, when we recognized our economy was linked to the U.S. economy, we took a second bold step. We changed our money from pounds, shillings, and pence to the dollars. Bold and big. But that wasn't big enough. The people realized that giving women the right to vote was just and the right thing to do. And we moved bold again to a modern Bahamas. We then moved to Black Tuesday. The black majority was still getting restless because they were not getting enough of those US dollars from the tourists. And they saw the white class benefiting inequitably from access, wealth, and basic human decency. And they pushed for and demanded majority rule, and they got it. Another bold move. The majority made the better decision, and a triple economy begun within a decade. We saw the expansion of our economy from just over $300 million in national budget to over $1 billion in a decade. Mr. Speaker, if I were to have it my way, I would say we had our own man on the moon movement because of the Bahamas being under black leadership. We showed the world effectively that we could run things. Our people became the stars of the tourism industry. I could think of none other than Arthur Mabeau, for example. He comes to mind. All over the world, talking about the Bahamas, in America, Europe, etc., with our local officials, bands and cuisines in tow. We would have won gold medals, Academy Awards. We showed ourselves and the world that they could mark the manner of our bearing. We educated our people. We took over the civil service and therefore led the way in forging the path for a meaningful middle class being formed in the Bahamas. Folks, we were running a country and putting tourist offices all over the world. There were two things that happened, I must note, during this period that would have been good for us. Cuba closed its borders due to the Cuban Revolution. And the UK government, the UK people elected a Labour government, which led to the overtaxed rich and rich at heart, I guess, deciding to move their monies offshore. Bahamas became the third largest financial center in the world. But I note quickly, our triple staple was BTC. That is why its sale was such a heart-wrenching event to the PLP and to the Bahamian people at large. It was a beacon of success to black people and led the way, in no small way, in the burgeoning Bahamian economy and society, creating further good jobs, and we saw an expanded civil service, banking, and tourism sector, respectively. Life was good. No other country had a triple bumper society, but we didn't stop there. We then took the biggest step ever as a sovereign country, and we became an independent sovereign state, July 10th, 1973. We then formed central bank, printing our own money, gold. Then we established what I may say is maybe one of the boldest social initiatives ever in this part of the Western world, in the Anglophone Caribbean, the establishment of the National Insurance Board. In my view, unfortunately, after the establishment of NIB, we would have slowed generally in this society from making bold moves. I can think about the development of the Defense Force, the College of the Bahamas, development of the bank. I got that. But in my view, in 30 years, in which the present administration would have been government 20 of those 30 years, the most impressive development of this administration has been the freeing up of the airwaves in our Commonwealth, in my view. Over the past years, we have looked to foreign direct investments in hotels and touristic development to sustain our economy single-handedly. And we have not done enough to invest in our own ingenuity and human capacity so that we could withstand exogenous shocks. I know that most of what I have referenced earlier would have occurred under a PLP administration led by the father of this nation. Here we are today. Do you see what I see? With the F&M now poised to govern 20 of the 30 years, we are still today, as we stand in this place, in deep water. The present administration has borrowed just over $3 billion in 3 years. And according to their projections in their book, projected to borrow some $5 billion in 4 years on its present trajectory. This, Mr. Speaker, is record-breaking borrowing. It also has led to many the everyday payments saying that there's very little that they can see, feel, or touch amid all of this borrowing. The national debt is expected to be at an all-time high of some $10.3 billion by 2022. Debt to GDP stands at 82.8% at this present, in this present administration, and could be at some 85.65% by 2022. Taking a cursory glance, Mr. Speaker, and listening to my colleagues, one could very easily ask a question: if this is not an election budget, consultancies go on to bed. $68 million for special assistance on page 89 of the budget, $58 million for small business development, which is good, page 201, $8 million for subdivision development, $46 million for consultancy on, and I always like this one, no new taxes. I say, But I also know the fact that the office of the Prime Minister goes from $758,000 to just over $1.4 million. I then would ask, how many more writers, spokespersons, and others the office of the Prime Minister would need? He's a man who can speak for himself, although he runs to the microphones now and then. But he's a man who can speak for himself. How many more writers, script presenters, and others the Prime Minister's office would need? Mr. Speaker, I want you to go quickly with me to my constituency, then I'll come back to some things that concerns me today. In the community of Mangrove Keys, that listened this morning, Speaker, and South Andros, we're hearing the news that we could have a medical doctor by June 16th in South Andros, but we are still waiting for medical doctors to arrive. Infrastructural improvement in the Family Islands are critical for their mere survival. Good roads are still needed from Drakesville to Mars Bay, and the same could be said in the Central Andros district from the Andros Town Airport to Coakley Bight. The need for small business assistance is critical in the South, Central, and Mangrove Key constituency. Young women and young men need this intervention. And there are many young men and women who remain in the district who today don't want a handout, they want a hand up from their government. Raleigh Smith and Nathaniel and Shamin Adams comes to mind. Caden Smith, the Reverend Josh Farrell and Tori Bevins, South Andros, Benjamin Forbes Jr., Terry DeValier, who's gone back home and invested much, Andrea Russell with the Ha with the craft industry, Roy Neal Lewis, Ryan Smith, to name a few. And I skip across the water on the ferry as we hope for a new ferry and also increasing of the stipend from the Minister of Transport, who would have grown up in the summers, especially in the Drinksville community, so we can traverse across the Mango Key and better ferry one day. Reverend Christopher Smith, Marvin Miller, Cheyenne Grain and others, Harry and Sherez Saunders, Calvin Jolly and Linwood Saunders, Donald Saunders, all are young men, women in Mangrove Key, expecting better. In Central Andros, same could be said for those young people who continue to build. And I celebrate them today because, Mr. Speaker, it's very easy to leave these family island communities and say you're going to go for the brighter, the bigger city life. Central Andros, we have the Dave Nemore, Cecil Penn Jr., Kendario Edgecombe, Trona Coakley, Glenn Klinger Johnson, Lionel Lime Bain and Love Hill, Ian Robin, Roy Hanna right now listening, Nikki Marshall, Van Dyke Bain, Sean Leeden, Theodore Dimey Russell, all of these persons are waiting for an opportunity. These are young people who have remained in these communities and not all need access to the small business development opportunity that this government is offering. Mr. Speaker, need I remind the governing side? Because many times you hear commentary across the floor. There seems to be some espousing of the view that these are F&M funds. These are taxpayers' dollars. And these monies should be accessible to all and sundry. All Bahamians should have access to the $58 million. Be it PLP, F&M, DNA, or whatever you might want to be affiliated with. It's Bahamian dollars, and once you qualify, and there should be a benchmark for qualifying. Don't make it difficult for people to access their money to make their lives better. That's what should be seen in our country today. We need an increase in mailboat stipends. The irregular services and trips of mailboats is a major concern for my people today in South Andros. Mr. Speaker, this is something that we've been grappling with for a little while. Unless you would have lived and understand family island life, you don't understand the challenges. And also the fact that today, as maybe the Captain Mukti gets set to go to Andros, there's a form that persons can fill out at the airport at LPIA, but at the dock, persons are grappling with what to do. If I were to go to the mailboat, can I get on the mailboat? Is there an application form at the dock for them to fill out? Or what happens there for people who want to go to the farm island? Somebody comes to Nassau to sell their crab or their wares or their products to return to their native hometown. They don't need the complications and the trappings of the big city. They come to Nassau, or they come to town to do business, buy a little grocery, and they're out of town. So we've got to make life easier for people, especially in Andros. I can't talk for no one else. They might have it all in the bed of ease. I am talking for Mangrove Key, South, and Central Andros primarily, but to the nation secondarily. Mr. Speaker, airline and intra-island domestic travel and costs is another issue. It shoots up and changes any given day. You go to the airport today and you never know what's going to happen. Airline ticket has gone up, or the plane is not going to go today because there isn't enough people going or persons traveling. It is unfair, especially in challenged family island districts. In our community, before I leave my district, we're still grappling with this issue. And I want to say to the Minister of Education, we thank him for the efforts that he would have made in the internet services through BTC and others for our students having minimal access to the online educational programs. Cable television, good telecommunication is still a major concern. Telephone calls are still dropping in Andros and further Deep South, 18 minutes away. Can't get good, consistent WhatsApp or basic telephone calls. I want to thank the member for Long Island, who is now serving as executive chairman at the Water and Sewage Corporation. Our water system is now moving at a good pace, and we expect to have good, potable drinking water from the government's complex to Mars Bay within the next 2 months or so. I want to thank him publicly. So I'm grateful. I know what it is to be thankful as an island boy. Many of you are not, but I know what it is. I also want to thank in his absence the member for Long Island, a member for Carmichael, my lifelong friend, for assisting, as he mentioned, very shortly with a new bridge that is critical. And I don't need Apostle Dorinda Dane and Prophetess Miller and Bowen Song to keep on reminding me about this matter. The member for Michael would have made a promise and a commitment to the people of Fresh Creek. It is a crying shame as the member for Kalani sits here. His uncle place would have virtually burnt to the ground some years ago because OTEC was afraid, Angliston, to send the fire engine across the Fresh Creek Bridge because it could have been imperiled by what we call falling through the bridge. Monk Mariah, that should not be happening to someone. You have roots in pure gold in South Andros. You should be defending me around the table when you sit with member for Kalani. Make sure we get good bridges in these islands, Monk Mariah. You have much allocated to you. You should maybe divert a couple dollars to these family island communities, to local government. I would also like to say that we look forward to the conclusion of the gymnasium in South Andros, the brainchild of Lynn Stewart, Kendall Taylor, and Basil Rose. And it's critical to the enhancement of our athletic and community-based programs. And we thank the minister for his efforts. We still need and anticipate further governmental assistance in the expanding the sports opportunities in Little Harbor, adjacent to the BPL building in Mangrove Key, and the upgrading of sporting facilities at Cranes Park and Fresh Creek and at the Central Andros High School. The lighthouse sale and possible reopening is still a major concern in Kalani, and we are hoping for an economic stimulus with the opening of the lighthouse, the historic landmark Lighthouse Club in Fresh Creek, pretty shortly. But most importantly, before I leave Andros directly, North Harbour Cove, I am asking, I'm going to get to the crowd. I'm going to thank Kalani for the crowd. The crowds are starting to walk, and that's a very good sign for the PLP. God is a good God. Well, the PLP can take all them crowds out of your pen, North Harbour Cove. I must note the fact that the people in Andros need land titles. We need to give the people the land. Empower our people, for God's sake. Give them titles to the land, man. The Prime Minister promised the people that he would have done all of the assessments. Keep going. We need the people in Andros to have titles, all those young people who have stayed in the community, who built some land, who want to upgrade and expand their business, need land titles. Get the people in Johnson's Bay, in Little Harbor, in Grants, in Peaks, in Bowen Sound, and Cargill Creek, in Loveville and Calabash Bay. Give them titles to the land, man. Let these people go. Let them fly. Let my community grow. People want titles to the land, and all these people in Andros need it. How can I forget Mars Bay? Mr. Speaker, as housing, the environment, sports, culture fall within my shadow remit, I cannot help but note in a cursory fashion the concern about the cut by some $5+ million from the Ministry of Youth and Sports budget and the lessening in contributions to to civic and youth organizations in the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and also the cutting of the subventions to our athletes. A major concern. And the Ministry of Youth and Sports budget is cut by just over $5 million in this, what we call the adjustment period. It is one that causes much dislocation, and if it's cut, I can assure you that the persons in the family islands are going to feel the first brunt of that cut. What about the children? That is the question, Exuma. I had it right here. What about the children? And so we need the house, the development, and the improvement for our young people. After school program at Queens Park and Fresh Creek, baseball with Cecil Penn. At the Central Andros High School, completing that track that Basil O'Neill started over 10 years ago at the Central Andros High School. Improving the facilities for baseball with the Freedom Farm and Greg Burrows and his fine organization in South Andros. Governance is continuous. And so on behalf of the people of my constituency, with the $5 million that has been cut, I'm asking the member for East Grand Bahama, for his good graces, do not cut us. We need further increase in my community for our youth program. We need our young people to be advantaged, not further disadvantaged. I also note that on a serious, this is also a serious impact, Mr. Speaker, quickly, in the health arena worldwide, but also especially in housing, land, and property, especially among women in low and middle income countries. Women today are totally disadvantaged. In the Bahamas, the large portion of our homes are headed by unwed or single mothers. Therefore, it is critical for this government to implement protective measures to ensure that no one else loses their homes, especially post-COVID-19, whether due to foreclosure, eviction, or inheritance issues. And I must note quickly that this whole rental assistance issue has been one that has caused much concern. Landlords, just the other day, a young lady told me her landlord should have been the police to tell her she must leave, after she would have tried to negotiate with her landlord. And so you heard what the Prime Minister said from Parliament. This is a very serious thing. When we make pronouncements in this place, people take them serious. Many places would have been furloughed, others would have been laid off or didn't get assistance, and also the assistance at NIB took a little while. You saw the lines at the Thomas A. Robinson Stadium. Persons out there are hurting in our society today. And they went on our word, they went on the Prime Minister's word. Rent assistance, you would have thought that there would have been an outreach to get to many landlords in this country and have members of Parliament, especially in New Providence, taking the list out to those people who are landlords, especially in the inner city and the other areas. No such thing, in my view, would have been done. So young women in particular today are challenged, threatened with eviction as I stand in this honorable place, because they listened to what was said in this honorable place. And like Anglison said, some already been evicted. We must protect our women's rights, especially during this period. The pandemic has put many of them in a very precarious position. Mr. Speaker, $8 million for a government subdivision is almost laughable. The PLP simply had a turnkey policy. We empowered our people and gave them a chance to have a piece of the rock. On this side, we assailed the government's 30,000 lot property program as simply one that couldn't work. $30,000 for the property. Real scenario, most of these women are 35 to 55 years old, 2 children, rent, light, water bill, school fees, and they must find legal fees and pay the contractor. The time she finished paying for the property, she's 50 or 55 years old. When she can build a house as a single mother. I know this. Right now as I speak, my mom, Deaconess Lily Mae Forbes, is watching me in McCullough Corner. And but for the good graces of the government's intervention in the over-the-hill house campaign, she got a house. We're proud of it today. It stands as a beacon in McCullough Corner East, less than 1,000 feet away from the slavery wall. That's why I speak the way I do. I'm a free man today in this country, and I'm proud of my history. He said this program was doomed to fail, and it has. And in my view, it has found one. Our people are still having a hard time merely surviving in the Farmland Island. We have heard much about the government's feeding plans being conducted, but I hope when it goes to the Farmland Islands, it simply goes through the administrator's office, void of partisan politics. Farmland Island politics could be very personal and antagonistic at times. So you're all from the big cities and wouldn't understand that. And it gets very puerile. So I'll ask for the local government to be involved, chief councillors, civic and religious leaders, in the various settlements. These local generals tend to know who need individual or general assistance more in these communities. I hasten to note that some of the small businesses in the Farmland Islands are wary of accepting government vouchers. Although I thank the member for Southern Shores and Social Services for extending the assistance at this time. But we must do more to make sure small business operators in the Farmland Islands, in particular in my district, are paid on a timely basis so that they could extend these courtesies and allow people to use their vouchers more in the Farmland Islands. Also thank the member for Kalani, Bamboo Tang, and the member for Marco City with assistance with the crab issue, selling issue here in New Providence. I want to say thanks to you personally. It was a very challenging time for our people, and I'm glad so that you were able to step in, because some business people were treating my people when they come to sell their crabs in New Providence with a level of contempt and moving them around and talking them all kind of how. I want to warn them now as I'm live on TV. When you touch them, you touch me. A word to the wise is sufficient. I ain't threatening nobody, say no police, no summons. If you touch them, you touch me. We don't need no George Floyd moment in this country. Simply leave it as that. Environmentally, the world disruption caused by COVID-19 pandemic has resulted and numerous impacts on the environmental and climate change level. Up to 2020, increases in the amount of greenhouse gases produced since the beginning of the industrial era has caused the average temperature to rise, which has led more serious hurricanes, earthquakes, mudslides, sea level rises, for example, which have all had profound impact on the following but not limited to air quality, water quality, wildlife, deforestation and reforestation, carbon emissions, retail and food production, litter, investments and other economic measures. And also, due to the pandemic, and also COVID-19 and other things involved there, but we also extend it has implications for politics. The Paris Accord, environmentally COP21 and 22, and the recent developments with the U.S. withdrawal from these protocols is of much concern. There's also predicted rebound effect of greenhouse gases post-COVID 2019 after much cleansing of the environment due to the same over the past 3 months. You saw the pictures with China and Brazil. You can see the skies for the first time in many, many years, clearly. Mr. Speaker, I simply move now to the future. The future beckons us today. It was H.B. Arthur who penned, and I noted, I quote, "We are learning to swim in a post-COVID-19 world. We are no longer on the beach. We've become accustomed to a certain level of stability. The solid ground beneath our feet is now supposed to be shifting. The water is supposed to stay at the edge of the beach, and we should be safe to build idle sand castles. The truth is, this pandemic has swept us out to sea, and we will never go back to that safe place that we had on the beach. Instead, the ocean is now our home. There we would find ourselves today and for the foreseeable future. We cannot just swim back to shore. We must learn how to swim, surf, and to build while in the middle of the ocean. Simply put, this is where Sir Lyndon would have stood almost 40-something years ago. And he would have said it like this: if you can't cut bait, you must get out of the boat. And I would not say that in this honorable place, because he said that somewhere else. If the speaker would allow me, but I know he's a good churchman, he wouldn't allow me to say that today. I don't want to be turned out of the jumbo church come Sunday. We must be bold. We must now take bold steps. We must see a difference. People want to see a difference in us out of COVID-19. People are tired of this government complaining about the PLP and the blame game, what we didn't do. Man, you've been there long enough. They want to see some new things happening. Look at New Providence, for example. I was talking with a businessman the other day. He said, what if we were to be bold and we have local government in the Family Islands that me and North Abaco must grapple with? Think about it in no small way. Why we can't see, for example, an autonomous New Providence with mayors and provinces where protocols beyond the normative statutory regulatory regimes of the 1996 Local Government Act. We must be brave and do some big things, man. Shake this country up. All of those people in this, all these young executives in this town, we can't do something different. We got to wait for the U.S. economy and market to open for us to hopefully see some new life in this society. Bahamas would have come through slavery, Civil War, World Wars I and II, the Great Depression, the oil embargo of 1973, Gulf War of 1990, the dot-com expected crash of 2000, 2011, the recession of 2008, and now we stand after COVID-19. We must once again be bold and brave. This is what we expected to hear from the Economic Recovery Committee. That's why I asked for persons such as Lyndon Nairn and Lester Cox and Goen Bow and others to be added. Arinthia Komalafe, Roosevelt, Finlayson, and others. What about Family Island businessmen like Prescott Smith or one of the Bow brothers or Dwight Hart of the Exomas? Why were they not considered? We expect to hear and see bold and dynamic things coming from this committee to make this country jump again. We don't need a committee to tell us we need to open Bay Street when the airports and hotels. Well, you know, we could watch the news and go on social media and WhatsApp. And the member for St. Anne's and the member for Freetown, they could tell us when to open Bay Street back up. They know the story there. We don't need no big-time, highly paid committee to tell us when to open a base stream. They could do that. They don't need no committee to tell us that. The banking sector has been a pivotal subset in the financial sector, and its role in the growth process of our economy cannot be overemphasized. We got to be bold once again. It plays a dominant role in the financial intermediation process of most developed and developing countries, thus connoting that the financial sector of most countries are simply bank-based. This sector has been, in more recent years, has seen the need for redress, implementations and amendments, and outright reworking of legislation and regulatory regimes more than any other sector on the global scheme of transnational development. The banking sector reforms performs by and large five major functions to facilitate economic growth. One, providing information with possible investments and also the allocation of capital. The monitoring of investments and exerting of corporate governance after providing credit. Facilitating trade, risk, diversification, and risk management. Mobilizing and pooling of resources, facilitating of exchange of goods and services. Bahamians should be able to look to the Bank of the Bahamas the same way Barbadian, Jamaican, Trinidadian look to their national bank and see leadership. We should see the same in the Bahamas. Bank of the Bahamas, in my view, should be leading the way in the financial services sector in savings, investments, and growth prospects for GDP. The days of sitting down and paying executive bills and blaming everybody, the government and foreigners, are over. We can no longer wait for hedge funds, rich expatriates, and some internationally well-connected conglomerate to come and save us daily. Those days are over. And we all know the challenges with international banking protocols. Every time we hear certain words or certain acronyms, FATF, OECD, EU, for example, we all become frightened. These fears are too often. Developing countries must therefore come together or decide single-handedly that they are going to act bullish. One would have thought by now you would have heard some revolutionary ideas, for example, how to transform our society coming out of these committees. The transformational plans, deliverables, that will simply get this economy moving in a meaningful way. Why haven't we heard these bold plans after maybe this committee sitting with some financial analysts and advisors and putting plans together so that we can face the world in short order? We need to speak to the future. We don't need to hear about debt and debt rescheduling every time we come to this place, and blaming and chastising every day. We must challenge our people today, Mr. Speaker, to move in a different direction if we want to build a resilient society and one that is ready to face the world. We must be bold and we must be brave. But since you're not being bold and you're not being brave, well, I could tell the member for Cat Island, it ain't long now. We will all be brave very shortly together under your leadership, sir, as Prime Minister of this great Commonwealth. Almost every other quarter or biannually, we are concerned over the words blacklisting. Years ago, the Bank of the Bahamas would have had an office in North Abaco in Miami. I'm glad that you in East Grand Bahama here. I didn't come for no regular riff-raff kind of thing today. I want our people to think differently, think out of the box. Why aren't we in the Miami Business Center now? The Bank of the Bahamas should have been there at the Miami Corporate Center, for example, and have been the main one for the remittances of funds to the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Trinidad, and its neighbors. Bahamas, the Bank of the Bahamas, in my view, should act like the Bank of the Bahamas and stop being seen as servile to the Royal Bank. Our people are tired of us saying that we can't do this, we can't do that, and this stuck-up mentality. After 58 years, our people has the right to be disgusted with the collective financial and governmental leadership in these matters. For example, we must think out of the box and look at what I would see as Andros. Let's go to Central Andros, Fresh Creek, which is closest, 10, 12 minutes. Think the Silicon Valley of the Bahamas. The land is there. Remember when they went to California, so that's wasteland. Nothing can grow there. now the richest wine factories in the world, Silicon Valley. Andros is just that. Imagine today, transfer in your mind the community of Andros with all of the great land, the water, everything is there, the proximity, the people just awaiting this new development. A real autonomous city in the community of Andros. Let me get an issue. Instead of hearing about the bragging of passports, we can issue our own passport, our own police records in the main, licenses, do all of these things healthcare-wise in Andros. And let the Andros diaspora come back home to serve in a state-of-the-art complex, fully connected to the world in Fresh Creek with the other local government officers in Andros serving in an ancillary role. We must totally retrofit the community of Andros for the 21st century. We must allow our young people in Fresh Creek, Southern Mangrove Key, Andros to be a part of the process of engaging the world with business and corporate groups from China, the US, Canada, the European bloc, CARICOM, the United Arab Emirates, and Central America. We got to make and help our people think big. We got to go bold or go home, man. We got to stop thinking small and stop short-cutting our people. We can do this. Our people in Andros are waiting for the opportunity. And many who are abroad will want to come home and be a part of it. See new airport development and projects, FBOs, road and bridges, improved parking house, manufacturing and technical centers being developed in Andros. Quite frankly, I think the idea, I give some credit to this construct that comes to mind, to the former member for North Africa and former Prime Minister. He had it in mind when he made a major investment of some $50+ million in North Africa some years ago. And we promised the same. We must, in construction and investment, invest major monies in the community of Andros to turn it around. It's a proud people. They're ready to move. But with little assistance, we must turn that community around. Bank of the Bahamas must now look to have branches further afield. Why isn't the Bank of the Bahamas, for example, looking at having branches in Brussels or London and following their banking and financial protocols, of course? And we can get rid of this consistent undermining of a financial services sector. We must be able to do these things. We still have this on the beach mentality and kicking the sand through our toes. Those days are gone. We must now be prepared to compete with the big boys on the world stage. We have borrowed too much money. There's nothing to show for it. Therefore, there must be a paradigm shift and change to a can-do mindset. And that must begin today. The Bahamas must take some radical changes in veering its philosophical and governmental protocols of merely surviving to one of a strong resolve to be resilient, reinvigorate, reimagine, and to reform our dependency syndrome mindset as we forge quickly to a new frontier of developments in business, civics, societal norms, etc., with an ethos of proficiency and deliverability in mind. Once again, the days of blaming, shaming are gone. You have been the government past 20 out of 30 years. Passing the buck attitude is not acceptable. We borrowed enough money, nothing to show. Our people are saying they want change and they want it now. The old will not do. Companies must also, Mr. Speaker, come back stronger. They must look for momentum loss, but also new technological advances coupled with human resource intervention. Speed matters. For those in the business sector, you must have a startup mindset, like the government. And the people don't want no more crybaby business right now. You must move at a brisk cadence to encourage it, and must encourage agility and also a new level of accountability. Once again, you must move from the blame game because that time is fast spent. The government must lead the way as a major employer in the rebuilding of the extended mental capacity thrust in the Bahamas. Must put speed on, my brothers and sisters, because our people are tired of political rhetoric and propaganda. They want to see a productive and highly productive society, one that leads to their personal and also, by and large, societal fulfillment. It must start today, beginning at government, quasi organizations and entities. For example, they must see a difference when they go to BPL, BTC, Customs, Immigration, Bank of the Bahamas, Water and Sewage Corporation, Bahamas Air, to name a few. We expect to see new attitudes. We expect to see technological advances, better services, and we expect to see that now. We expect an increase in capital work, putting all Bahamians to work in the capital sector. Roads, bridges, school repairs should be going on now. We should be reimagining sustainable operations and competitive product in our tourism, banking, and financial services. Small product development and light manufacturing with an accelerated developmental mindset post-COVID-19. There must be continued improved environmental awareness and sustainable campaigns with a more connected society and a much more nimble ecosystem management and so. Androsians are beyond the point and are tired of the fact that they must be virtually begging assistance on their own or waiting for the Bahamas National Trust or some other nature conservancy group to come down and tell them about the importance of ecological development and preservation. There should be a strong line item, Mr. Speaker, in my view, since Andros is the basket of the Bahamian society, the breadbasket of the Bahamian economy, in my view, that a strong line item should be there, especially for nature preservation, forestry, marine life, the list goes on. But also this would allow for more direct buy-in and allow our people to fly their own ship. Our people want to see a new day in the community of Andros. Today, I celebrate the life of the late catechist Adeline Bilson, one who gave much to the community of Central Andros, catechist, community builder, who passed recently, and advisor and a friend to me. To a family, we extend condolences. But quickly, one of the major frustrations East Grand Bahamas for small businesses in our society. I hear these stories too often. This morning I got 2 of those calls. I want to get business started. You have to get your mother's birth certificate, go to the registry. Some people don't know where the registry is at. Get this or that. Print a light bill, water bill, voter's card, NIB. Got to look here and there for this and that. That Bahamas is 20th century. That Bahamas should be gone. You must now swim. You must act with alacrity while maintaining a sense of possibility in the 21st century Bahamas. We must be enduring in our source of competitive advantage to our beloved country. We must be brave. To the small business sector, you must accept some level of culpability for your challenges that you are caught in today. Due to many of you may be making irrational and poorly thought of decisions in your spendings or investments. If you're in the mall, the business plaza, on Michael Road, Palmdale, or over the hill, one of our heritage community, or in the Family Islands, you must identify and prioritize revenue opportunities and make a now or never move that is needed to recover or to kickstart your businesses in our Family Island communities or here in New Providence. This may include launching targeted campaigns to win back loyal customers via WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or even hard media that has kind of fallen by the way. This should be used and might be used as a secondary source. For those businesses that are about to reopen, as you get into maybe the 4th and 5th phase, showcase your health and your safety protocols so people can feel good about coming to your business place. Adjusting your prices and promotions based on what's available, and so people can know that you have critical supplies with you. Reallocating or spending to proven growth sources, for example, and keeping your eyes on new innovations and vistas in the business world. Reskilling your sales forces and also using remote sales plans, for example, due to the new physical distancing protocol that all of us must observe. Great flexible payment terms, for example, and digitize your sales channels. Automate some processes that will make it easier for people to get in and out of your businesses. Companies cannot get greedy and try to make all the money back that you may have lost in the last 2 or 3 months in 1 day or 1 week. I must say that again. As soon as the economy opens, there be those who know there's a high demand for certain products that they may have, who might want to go up on their prices to hurt our people. I would advise them not to do that. We must help our people because many of our people are hurting in these very challenging times. Have a heart and have a conscience. Execute quickly and be flexible. This will lead to increased earning capacity in the post-COVID world. As the Bahamas adjust to a new global norm, fundamental changes and opportunities will exist, which could lead to us repositioning due to some dislocation with the overall good intact in our Commonwealth. But integrity and credibility in leadership is going to be critical here. The Bahamian people must believe what they hear coming out of the halls of Parliament. If the leadership in this country is challenged, this country is not going to see brighter days. The Bahamian people must believe what you are saying in this place. If they don't, there'll be no buy-in, and we will continue to catch hell as a people. I must say also quickly, we've also heard stories of those who might have been dispersed or working what they call in virtual workplaces, adopting to the new social distancing protocol, which will lead to more efficiency with some time in the public or quasi-governmental sector, and the delivery of services and work which can be done, as we say, from home. Persons who you allow to work in these remote or virtual workplaces cannot feel, Mr. Speaker, in their view that they have been pushed aside and their views or inputs are no longer valued. People cannot feel ostracized, that you simply push them aside because you don't like them, because you think they're PLP, you tell them they could work from home. You think they're F&M and they're no longer real F&M, you tell them they could work from home. I'm talking real talk here. And we've got to be mindful of these developments taking place in our country. This Bahamas is for all of us. And I know of which I speak. The new Bahamas coming after COVID must be prepared with new skills, training, and development. We must be confident to face changes. Support from government and business leading sector leaders is critical. Flexible, compassionate, but expectant threshold leadership is important from various organizations. Union leaders and various labor representatives must understand the same. And this is an important note, Mr. Speaker, that the season for the tripartite leadership season should be manifested now for the building of the national good. Let's be prepared for the increased cyber risk that comes with displaced and remote working from home and other locations. We must rethink, re-engage, recommit, reflect, reboot with a resilient mantra. But most importantly, the government and its leadership must be honest with the Bahamian people. Our people are today hurting, they are frustrated, and you need to come clean with our people. There's too much dislocation and hurt in the wider society. Our people are challenged, many don't know where to turn today. The frustration is real. They are at the sports center, they're frustrated, they're standing in the heat, many of them. No vouchers in their hand, can't use their RISE card, the vouchers cannot be utilized, and they have 2 or 3 children from behind them, and they're hurting. We must be able to reach down and hurt and help those who are hurting in our society today. We must be bold, honest, brave, responsive in a dynamic 21st century Bahamas. I say to those, though, who have lost hope in the enterprise of government, there's much hope. We have a caring and loving leader and the leader of the opposition, a man who understands our people. One leader. I must say that we on this side, we have one leader, member for Nassau Medicine Speaker, and I note the fact that he would be one that they can repose confidence in, who would understand their plight, because he's the man who's always willing to assist those who are challenged and disenfranchised. I have confidence in the Honorable Philip Edward Brave Davis. He's a man who understands the Bahamian society, its ethos, and its people. Maybe it isn't so long, Brave. Continue to be brave. Keep your shoulders wide and keep them strong. Drinking that good old Cat Island tea, my boy. Because you and I, whenever that bell is rung, you and I would be on that side. And the people of our beautiful Commonwealth would be expecting much of us in this honorable place. The Bahamas await that day. Our people do not no longer need just food vouchers, as well intentioned as they may be. They want opportunity, access, dynamism, leadership that they can believe in. Our people, for the most part, Mr. Speaker, want to build their own communities for themselves, their own businesses. Their only requirement from their government is a square deal. The government starting today must find a way to recapture the energy, ingenuity, and creativity of our people on the road to recovery. The government, although I doubt they would find a new rhythm, but I must say that Brave Davis is a man of rhythm. You know, to watch him with the Rake and Scrape band, he understands the rhythm. But most importantly, he understands the rhythm and the challenges of our Bahamian people. Today, we must find a new rhythm from Abaco in the north to Inagua in the south. We must act with a new pace, maintaining a new level of vibrancy and instilling it at all levels, and also assisting those that fall through the cracks. We must commit ourselves to a new order starting today. A new order. Anytime now, today, even more than before. We must lift our heads. We must march on boldly, Bahama land. Mr. Speaker, as we march and we build, resolve to build a better Bahamas, we must be bold and we must be brave. We must be bold and we must be brave. As we move this country, as we anticipate shortly, to a new city on the hill, a city of gold. Today, Mr. Speaker, as I take my seat, on behalf of the fine people of Mangrove Key, South, and Central Andhra, I want to say thank you for this opportunity to represent you today. And we look forward to the day when we will see New Day beckoning just over the Hilton. One, as we were climbing together, and we will get there in the not so distant future. Today, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you, and may God continue to bless the people of South, Central, and Mangrove Key Andhra. By extension, may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, just before we proceed, I would like to indicate the way forward as it relates to the COVID-19 physical distancing effect within the Parliament. What I have decided is that based on the physical distancing requirement, we are able to seat effectively 29 members in the chamber with the addition of the gallery. So from this point forward, beginning after lunch, the only two members who are naturally always required to be in chamber outside of the quorum, of course, is the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. The government caucus can determine those persons who would be in chamber, and the opposition caucus will determine which members will be in chamber. I've decided that 75% of the opposition members will be in chamber, and 75% of the government caucus will be in chamber, and 1 or 50% of the independents will be in chamber. That makes 3 out of the 4 opposition members will be in chamber, and the other 1 will rotate in. 24 of the 32 government members will be in chamber, and the other 8 will rotate in, and 1 of the 2 members, independent members, will be in chamber, and the other member will rotate in. And the reason for that is all members are constitutionally have a right to be in chamber and to be seen by their constituents. And so it is really not fair to some members who are not seated in chamber on a regular basis and have to be in the minority or majority room. And since the Lord established the principle of not being a respectful person, I will adopt that principle. And from this point forward, 3 members of the opposition will be in chamber and the other opposition member will rotate in. 24 members of the government caucus will be in chamber and the other 8 will rotate in, and 1 member of the independents will rotate in. Now, of course, when, for example, there are seats that are not occupied as we have at this moment, persons are permitted to come in and to be seated not in the original seats, but in the gallery. Honorable members, I hear a rumbling across the floor. But believe me, members. Don't be tempted. No, I'm not tempted. Believe me, members. It is because I'm getting constant requests from members who are entitled to be in chamber, who are downstairs in the majority room. And the chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, obviously we're getting some requests from members to be in this place. They want to be represented. Mr. Speaker, we do have a system, so what I will do is both yourself, both me, you, the clerk of the House, and the whip will sit down, and then we'll be able to work it out so that members have an opportunity. And yes, the leader of opposition business as well. I used to have that job as well, so I was always wanting that respect. No, it's not. Neither am I trying to make it about me, by the way, Angleton. So we will have that conversation, Mr. Speaker, so that we can ensure that we move forward. Eh?
Thank you.
Let's Frank Hill then stand up and then we'll go.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, given what is taking place, this is a good place for us to take our luncheon break, Mr. Speaker. And so I do move that the House suspends until 2 p.m. Members, I do 2 p.m. The House typically takes a 2-hour lunch. And so we're going to break now for lunch, Mr. Speaker, and we will be back at 2 p.m.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 2 p.m. this afternoon. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until 2 p.m. this afternoon.